This is the home screen of Kali Linux operating system. And the first step to do to install DVWA is to download the files. So for that, I'll open a web browser and I'll type DVWA Git because I'll be downloading the files from GitHub. You'll see a lot of links. I'll click on the first link of GitHub where I'll be downloading this web application from, and I'll just copy this URL. Now I'll open a terminal and download DVWA on my local system. Now before starting the download, I'll switch directory to var www and HTML because for a web application to run, all the files should be present in this particular directory. So first I'll switch to this directory and then I'll use the command git clone and I'll paste the URL that I copied and .git. This is the extension that you have to give, and then I'll hit the enter button. Now we can see that the project or the web application is getting cloned and it is done. Now I'll just run the ls command and see if it's there. Yeah, so you can see that there's a DVWA directory here. Now the next thing you have to do is give this directory all the permissions. To do this, I'll type chmod -R, which says to give the permissions to all the files in all the directories, and the permission I'll be giving this directory will be 777, and then the name of the directory. Now we have to set up this web application to run properly. For that, you have to go into this directory, DVWA, and under this directory, there is another directory called config. I'll just switch to that directory. And here you'll see a file named config.ing.php.dist. This file has got the default values, the default configuration. I'll just create the copy of this file and I'll name it config.ing.php. So keep in mind that the extension should be PHP. The reason for creating a copy of this file is that in future, if you make changes and you mess up something, then you always have a copy of the default values. So I'll just hit the enter button. And now I'll use a nano editor to make changes to this configuration file. Here you can see a lot of different configuration and the changes I'll be making is in this part. Firstly, I'll be changing the password to pass and the username to user. You can change the username and password to any username and password that you want, but make sure that you use the same username and same password throughout. Now I'll just save this file and exit it. To save, I'll type Ctrl O, and to exit, there will be Ctrl X. Now I'll just clear the screen. The next thing you have to do is configure the database. To configure the database, first I'll start the database service. The command will be service MySQL start. If there are no errors, that means the service is started. Now let's log into MySQL. I'll be choosing the username root. If the username of your super user is something else, then you'll have to use that username. Now I'll just hit the enter button. And because I haven't given any password, I'll click the enter button again. Now to set up the database to use DVWA, the first thing you have to do is create a new user. To create a new user, you'll have to type create user, the name of the user, that is user @ 127.0.0.1. I'm giving this IP address because this is the loopback IP address, which means that the web application is running on the local server. And then I'll type identified by, which is to provide a password, and the password will be pass and a semicolon. So remember, this username and the password should be exactly the same as the password and username that we entered in the configuration file of the DVWA web application. Now I'll just hit the enter button. Now the user is created. The next step to do is grant these users all the privileges over the database. For that, you have to type grant all privileges on. The name of the database will be dvwa dot star to provide privileges on all the tables and all the contents of that database. 2, and the username is user at 127.0.0.1, and then the password identified by pass and a semicolon. Okay, so the database is set up. Now let me just exit this database and clear the screen. So the web application is configured, the database is configured. Now the next thing you have to do is configure the server. Before configuring the server, you'll have to start the server first. So I'll be using the command service apache 2 start because the server I'm using is apache 2. Now we have configured the web application and also the MySQL database. The next step to do is to configure the server. For this, you'll have to make some changes in the configuration file. So first, I'll switch to the directory where this configuration file is. The directory will be cd etc php 7.3. In some cases, if you have a different version of Apache or different version of PHP, this path might change. So make sure you're in the right path and then Apache 2. Let's see what files I've got here. So this is the file, the php.ini is the file that I have to make the changes to. I use a gedit text editor and the file name is php.ini. The changes you have to make are these two configurations. The first one is allow URL f open. You have to set this as on. And the second one is allow URL include. You also have to set this to on. In some cases, maybe when it's the first time you're opening this file, you might find that one of these or both of these configurations are set to off. So make sure both of these configurations are set to on. Save the file and exit the file. Next thing to do is to start the service. So the command is service apache to start. Okay, so I've configured the server. Now let's open the browser and access this web application. To do this, I'll type 127.0.0.1 because this is where I'm running the web application on my local server. And the name of the directory, that is DVWA. I'll click the enter button. So when you open this web application for the first time, you'll see a setup page and you'll see a lot of different information regarding the configuration. So what you have to do is scroll down to this web application and click the create or reset database button. You can see that the database has been created and you'll see a lot of different information and you'll be redirected to a login page. The default password and username for this login page is the username is admin and the password is password. I hit enter. And here is the home page of Damn Vulnerable Web Application. There are some general instructions, warnings, and on the left hand side on this part, you can see there are a lot of vulnerabilities that are present, and you can practice these vulnerabilities. And like I told you about the security levels, if you look at this tab, let me just click this tab. You'll see that there are different security levels: low, medium, high, and impossible. If you want to change it, you can change it like this. You can set it to low and submit and then choose whichever vulnerability you want to practice and then run tools or hacking techniques. Well, that's how you can install DVWA on Kali Linux operating system.